Executive Director of Lanyap Law Lab, and we're a justice technology, legal technology nonprofit that's been working here in Louisiana as a strategic partner of the Bar Foundation, really since 2019. Although I think we're like really hitting our strides in terms of this entire kind of collective ecosystem and being partners with all of you. And I hope that by the end of the presentation, you'll understand a little bit more about what we do, how we work, and how you might also get involved in the work that we're doing, which is ultimately to benefit you guys as well as the members of the public and try and connect y'all through technology. So just a little overview of what I'll talk about today. I'm going to talk about Lanyap Law Lab briefly and sort of like our strategic priorities that sets us up at the high level. And then I'll talk specifically about how we deliver on our mission and specifically what resources we are developing for the public. But because it's a lot of, I think my thinking around this is we're trying to use technology as a bridge between y'all and the public. We're also starting to build out resources for you as service providers. And then I hope that we'll have time for questions, but if not, you can always email me. I'm happy to meet with any and all of you to the extent that you have a question about a specific program or project. But I'll just go ahead and dive right in. So, very broadly, our mission is to just try and make the access to justice system work a little bit more efficiently here, connect the dots, as I mentioned, between the public and the great services that you all provided. And we primarily do that through technology, but also a lot of design work within committee structures and using these sort of like design and operations and technology principles to try and make justice more accessible for folks in Louisiana. Our general priorities include creating public-facing resources. That's our biggest bucket. But we also do service provider consulting, working with legal service organizations on their technology, and then also contribute at a higher picture view and try to support research and strategic planning efforts so that the system and all the individual parts of it are working cohesively and collaboratively together, and then building the technology around what we see and observe through that sort of process. But I'm here mainly to talk about the immediate takeaways that I think are relevant for you guys, which is the resources for the public. I'm aware that we do a lot of building and we're not the best at communicating to the full network about the scope of what we do, but also all the amazing resources that we've been building up over time that hopefully will help you guys help more people. And so, of course, it's about that. And then just folks that are looking online for resources are able to find things that meet their needs. So I mentioned public-facing resources, that being our biggest bucket. We have a very simple process that we're following here. It's create the resource, distribute it to the public, and then try and keep learning. What are we learning? What are we hearing on the ground from people about what their needs are? And just try and keep this cycle of creating new resources and getting them out to the public as best as we can and learning from that process. We have done a great deal of learning. That has refined our ability to create these resources over the last several years. That creation primarily focuses on three core, um, I look at them as like goals of our system. So what we want to do is we want to inform people, educate them on their rights, responsibilities, legal procedures. We also want to empower them by offering them self-help tools and things like forms, automations, stuff like that that can help people resolve issues on their own where it's appropriate and where we think that we can help, people facilitate that on their own as to not as for the cycle to not just be strictly send people to legal aid where capacity, as you all know, is very limited. But then the gold standard of all that is connecting people to people that can help them. So this is about creating referral systems and ways for, again, members of the public to use our technology and resources to get connected to you so that you can help people with more complicated or, you know, bigger issues that we're not able to cover through self-help tools. Just to briefly, again, I have a framework for everything, for better, for worse. But we try to stay consistent in what we're creating. And so under our inform bucket, we're really focused right now on creating articles, which are just like long form, plain language content pieces, videos, which, as everybody knows, the world is going to videos as our attention spans get shorter. So trying to meet people where they are in that and take the resources that we're developing in the long form and break them up into other types of resources that might be more approachable for people. So that's videos and brochures as well. We learned through partnerships with libraries and our Justice Bus, and just there's something still very like magical about a tangible resource for people. Technology is not as, it's we have a it's difficult for people to always find you online, but if they find you via a brochure, that's a lead, to the website. So investing energy into creating other tangible resources that we can distribute through our Justice Bus program or other places. Again, all of these sort of like building off of the main article piece. And then we're also in the process of translating all of these materials into Spanish and hopefully additional languages as we continue to move through development of all of these things. And just to highlight some of that and put a finer point on it, on our websites, we have articles, long form articles covering 200 plus civil legal topics, ranging from, the highest use things like divorces and eviction, all the way, I think our newest resource was issues with owning a car. So really just trying to run the gambit of all the types of civil legal issues that people might have. And those long form articles, again, are the basis, the foundation of everything else, all types of other educational resources that we might build on top of them. We currently also have 67 videos. You can find them through our website, but we also have a YouTube channel at LA Legal Nav where folks can watch videos again on mostly a lot of family law topics, housing topics, things of that nature. And we're continuing to build out our brochures bank. Right now we have 22 printable brochures. And just yesterday I finished creating and publishing the page at lalegalnav.org. Sorry, there's a typo there, .org/brochures, where you can see all the brochures specifically that we've produced and have the ability to download them and print them off. And again, they just cover kind of a wide range of a lot of family topics, housing, wills and estates type things. But to the extent that you need these resources and you don't have the capacity to recreate them, we've got something for you. And that all leads back to the Navigator website, which I'll talk about in a moment, where you can find all this educational content and resources. So in our second Empower bucket of work, we're focusing primarily on forms. So that is court forms largely, templates, which are, there's a similar vibe to a template, but typically it's not in a court setting. So this might be like a demand letter or something like that for some out of court process, creating templates for people to take the next step on their legal journey and whatever that issue is. And then some worksheets that just help people kind of gather information, get them prepared for how they might talk to an attorney, or think about all the things that impact their potential matter. And then we also work to automate those things, bring them into a more user-friendly online interactive format so that folks can, again, do them online, go through simple sort of like guided interview questionnaire experience, and then at the end get the result of that template or form. So that's generally how we are trying to think about our Empower bucket of resources, is those interactive and interactive resources that help people accomplish some step on their legal journey. So some highlights we have of that are, court forms, whether they're just plain court forms or court form automations. We have an application called Good Repair, which helps people walk through the entire repair and deduct process, which, as y'all know, as lawyers, can be kind of technically tricky. If you do it wrong, you put yourself at risk for eviction, but we've made it such that folks can do the documentation, do the initial request, and then do the follow-up procedures if their landlord's not making repairs for their rental home. And then this is on the right, a legacy planning worksheet that we have that actually accompanies a will generator. I'll talk about a bit later, but it helps folks sort of just, again, document what's their family and marital history, what do they want to do with their property, who they want to have represent them. And so this can help folks, one, in the context of a will generator clinic experience, but otherwise just be prepared for if they are going to talk to an attorney about getting a will later down the line. A new highlight for us is that we've been undergoing a process of trying to define new accessible style for court forms, specifically through the Self-Represented Litigants Committee of the Bar Association. And this is a first publication from that design and research work that we have done to define what a new accessible form might look like. And we created an answer to an eviction form. So as you all know, only in Orleans Parish is there sort of a right to counsel for people. Many people go into the eviction process totally uninformed without any sort of resources. And so creating forms like this is part of our mission to help empower people if they do have to represent themselves. And so we're continuing to remediate old forms into this new style, and then we'll develop new forms in this way that is more simplified, plain language, using a ton of design principles and well-researched sort of accessibility principles and rationale to make the experience of using a court form less intimidating for people that are representing themselves. So we see a form on the front end, but there's been so much work that we do as an organization to try and really deeply understand and research what makes a good experience for somebody that has a legal issue. And this is one way that that manifests. Another resource highlight is we have both a template here for a sample security deposit. In this case, somebody could just write it out themselves. We do have a middle version, which is just a Word file that people could fill in, and then we have the highest automated version, which is a security deposit request letter generator, also a notice of move out. So we try to build accessibility of these resources along a scale depending on people's comfort with technology and things like that. But again, to me, the paper version is the most important. That's weird to say as a technology, but if you get the foundation right, the layers on top of that are a lot easier to manage, and it's a consistent sort of spectrum of resources there. We do have a lot of different resources. Our feed layer, the IFP application, this is one of our most popular ones because, again, as you guys know, the IFP is very lengthy, very not user-friendly, intrusive at times form, but we try to make it as simple as possible for people by automating it. And this application has thousands and thousands of uses that just helps you sort of skip the parts that you don't need, that don't apply to you, and automate putting in information where it's just duplicative, which saves a lot of time in drafting out that. It also includes follow-up instructions. You'll see here. So for people that are doing the IFP process on their own, we give step-by-step instructions about the notarization process, how they might file it, what to expect, and things like that. But it produces the automated or like a completed version of the form as you go through it. And a cool feature about what's nice about automations and using the technology is that, again, on paper, you're limited by the corners of the document, but we're able to do some sort of qualification efforts for folks by calculating their income. If you make 300% of poverty, you're not going to qualify to file an IFP. So giving people along the way information that can help them decide whether they want to go through with that process and try and just, I mean, I think of it as like being respectful of people's time, ultimately, and giving them an easy way to do what's ultimately a very complicated form. So moving into our Connect bucket of work in our public-facing resources, this primarily manifests as an events calendar that we're trying, and I'll beg you for events, that we're trying to collect events from around the state where people, again, can connect in person with legal service providers or outreach providers that folks can talk to. So at that events calendar, doing custom referrals or sorting for people based off of their household size, income, their legal issue, and things of that nature, so that again, they're not just presented with a list of 70 nonprofit organizations across the state. It's like, where am I? Which one of these apply to me? Which one am I likely able to qualify for? And then a new tool that we're just starting to roll out is a legal screening and online intake process that helps people identify legal issues and do preliminary eligibility screening according to the eligibility requirements of the organization that for which they are looking into, and then also online intake for that program if that's available. And so this is just sort of, I'll talk a bit more in depth about each of these in a moment, but you can just sort of see how it comes up. So now that I've overwhelmed you probably with the number of resources and like all the different projects that we've been working on, I want to talk about distribution because this is obviously a very key piece to that, and hopefully help you feel less stressed out about like, where is all that stuff? Where do I find it? So realistically, what I'll talk about is our Louisiana Legal Navigator, which is the main distribution platform that we're using. And then our program also has a justice bus and court kiosks slash access points that are embedded in courts or community locations. Again, I'll talk more specifically, but this is how we're thinking about the process of getting all these resources out to folks. And again, that main one being the Louisiana Legal Navigator. So everything I've talked about before in terms of educational content, the referrals, all of the self-help tools and forms, they live on this website. So it's a statewide application. We should have every single LBF grantee in our service provider database, and I'll encourage each of you here to kind of go check it out to make sure and contact me if something's wrong. But again, it's meant to be sort of the front door for folks that have a civil legal issue in Louisiana and need to get connected to one of these types of things. So as you'll notice, again, I like a framework, I like a category. The website pretty much follows that model that I demonstrated before. We're helping people find legal information, forms and self-help tools, and get connected to legal service providers. And those are the gateways that we kind of present to people so that they can decide where they are on their journey and what it is they're actually looking for. But of course, along the way, all these things are also kind of connected, primarily through the type of legal issue that people are looking at. Again, I won't talk too much. If you go to the website, louisianalegalnavigator.org, I encourage you to click around through the website. This is sort of how the legal information resources look like. Our forms and self-help each are uploaded, given a description, and have some standardized pieces of information around them, like who is this for? What should I expect when I use it? Like, how long is it going to take? Is there anything I need to do before I get started on this? And then if there are different versions, let's say a PDF version, a Word version, and a automation online, all those options are presented there. So it's under the same tool instead of broken up as a bunch of different pieces in the database. And for our service providers, this is it looks very similar to before. There's a description about the organization, how you can connect with them, what types of services they provide, and like sort of a general income eligibility description, as well as which types of legal issues they generally cover and which parishes that their office applies to. And then for our events, it's just key event details. If there's a registration process, we have the ability to add that link, and then let people be directed to your event registration process. It's not specific to, our website or anything. But this is where, again, I'll beg for folks, if you guys are having a clinic coming up, or if you're doing an Ask a Lawyer session, any type of in-person or even a virtual setup where you're doing an education event, we want to get those on to the Navigator portal so that when people come to our site, they can see all the amazing things that folks around the state are doing. And I will say we do get thousands of visitors to our website every month. So I think last month we crossed over 2,000 people in the 1 month period that were looking for resources on our website. So it's just trying to build the momentum for the network to also share all those great resources that you're doing here as we continue to grow out the platform. Now, the Justice Bus is another way that we distribute the resources that I've talked about. This is again where like brochures really come in handy at community events, but all of that ultimately leads back to the Navigator. I'm trying to create this ecosystem of resources, but that are still tied to some underlying sort of like centralized system. But the bus itself, we focus on a few main types of events. A community event is where we actually just go out to something like a health fair or a parade or some other community event where other folks are already assembling. Those are our most successful events. So I would also, if you need the presence of a bus at one of those types of events, let us know. We also do just Justice Bus events specifically where we schedule regular intervals at a library. So I think it's like every second Tuesday of the month, we're at the Vernon Parish Library, and are setting up some of those types of partnerships so that the community can have sort of a regular point of contact with our outreach manager that drives the bus. And then she will also attend networking events with other nonprofit organizations or other community organizations that are trying to help folks in their community. And then Lanyap is just everything else where, a lot of times people will come up to her. The bus is very, we'll call it, people are curious about like, what is that? What do you do? So people come up to her a lot of times at a gas station or at the grocery store or something like that. But these are how we generally track the outreach and the impact that the program is having, and think about how we want to do outreach events and what we're exactly looking for. And our court kiosks and access points, the court kiosks specifically are court-based. They provide access to the Legal Navigator platform, which, as we've already talked about, is information, forms, and referrals. For some jurisdictions that have their own forms, we are able to customize to let them link their forms to their own forms page on their own website, so that we don't inhibit the ability for all the other resources to get out there. And we offer printing, and this is sustained through general memorandums of understanding with either IT folks or the clerks. It really depends. It varies by location, honestly. But it's really just meant to be a more quick interaction that is not necessarily private, but is a gateway to the resources that we do have available. And then our access points are based outside of courthouses in community partner locations. So, for example, we have one in the Beauregard Parish Library in DeRidder. There's one in the LaSalle Community Action Agency in Catahoula Parish. And it's the same services as the kiosk, um, but also because of the booth and the privacy that we've been able to create with the booth version, can also have virtual meetings with lawyers or even attend remote court hearings from the booths, although those are seems like those have kind of gone by the wayside since we're all back in person. These were a COVID era innovation, so there's definitely some leftover design from that process. Um, our current kiosk locations, I won't go through each of them, but you can see here and our access points as well. We receive funding from the foundation to install kiosks in all 64 parishes. So the extent that you don't see um, your district court here or your parish, we would really be grateful for some assistance to try and connect with the right folks in your parish to try and set one up in the courthouse there, because we still have a long way to go. I joke that it's been a lot harder to give people free stuff than I thought it would be when we first set out to do this, but we're learning as we go, and we do hear really good. We hear good things from the courts that have these, and we see through our metrics that the impact is there as well. So highly encourage and appreciate any help that folks can offer to try and get some of these set up in places that they're just not currently installed. Okay, so in terms of resources for service providers, so that covers the universe. Ish. There's always more, but that covers the universe of what we're doing in terms of creating public facing resources and trying to get that out there into the community. But obviously, you guys are a key component of access to justice in our state. And as I've mentioned before, our goal is to sort of use the technology to connect you all to the public and build this sort of like infrastructure approach or ecosystem approach to how we're all collectively able to contribute to the goals that the Navigator portal has. The main highlights that I want to talk about specifically are the legal needs screening tool that I kind of introduced above, and then what I'm calling now the Atlas ecosystem of basically administrative functions and tools that help you again tap into what's being done on the Navigator site itself. And then I'll also talk about the will generator, which is not for direct members of the public, but is actually for you all as legal service providers to adopt and potentially, create a clinic model with volunteer lawyers, but you can also use it in-house if it's just a resource that you need. In terms of the legal needs screening, specifically what it does, uh, the essential pieces of it are that it helps people identify their potential legal issues and the needs that they have, identify if they are eligible, potentially eligible for services. I never want to insinuate that we can get to 100% certainty on eligibility because, as you all know, there are some very clear steps to the process, but there are obviously exceptions, and every organization has their own preferences and things like that. But we take the commonalities between all the organizations to try and help identify if people are going to be eligible for that service before we send them there. Enable an application for services online, again, using sort of the most common components of an intake process that's standard across all organizations. And then also provide the individual with resources on their issue. All those resources that we talked about before, they're related to specific legal issues, and the way that we've organized the platform around those legal issues lets us select which resources apply to them based off of what they've told us in this sort of screening process. So instead of the functions being disjointed, where we say, go get information here, go get forms here, go get a referral here, go apply online here, screen yourself with this tool, which is the old model of bringing technology online. We're able to integrate that into one process for people and connect those dots for them. Another key aspect of this is that it's meant to be partnership driven. So, I'll as as a service organization, you'll have the ability to have your own customized. You see here that this one's customized for Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. It looks like it belongs to them. I mean, it does belong to them. It really belongs to all of us. But it's branded to that organization. But we also have the ability for Southeast Louisiana Legal Services to enter into a partnership with somebody like the the two-lane medical clinic. And if those folks, they have social workers there, they've agreed to enter into a partnership, create a custom link that is specific to that partnership and organize how you want the screening topics to look, or how you want them to surface so that they're contextually relevant. So, for example, in the medical clinic, we know that most people that you're going to be screening issues for are probably going to be looking for things like wills or powers of attorney. So we're able to bring that to the top of the screening tool list. Or if you're partnering with a domestic violence shelter, you know the needs of that specific community are revolving around family law and, of course, domestic violence. So being able to contextualize where folks are physically and building those unique partnership links, which also allow for us to add additional logos, customized disclaimers to that specific partnership. There's levels of customization that can be offered for each individual screening tool, but it's built on the same technology that lets us do these four things: identify needs, identify eligibility, apply for services, and provide resources. So, and then as we move through our development of the Atlas ecosystem, we'll be able to get visuals and get data insights about which partnerships are, very effective at helping us get referrals for into legal services. This is just a little bit of what it looks like. There's two pathways, honestly, that folks can take. They can do a full legal screening, which is dictated by at the organization level. So if you only wanted to screen, if you're embedded in a domestic violence organization, you only want to screen and let people apply for a certain subset of issues. You don't need to have all of these categories. You could just have family and government services and housing. That could be what you choose to do. Um, but it presents people in sort of a plain language way that they can easily identify with, am I having this legal issue? And they can run through the gambit of potential problems that they're having. The alternative to that is we're using an AI issue classifier underneath this text box here that lets people just put in a brief description of their legal issue, which parish they're in, and we can actually diagnose based off of their own words which legal topic their issue is related to. And so that is then again attached to your organization's profile. And if you're accepting a case type or that type of case, we can continue through the process. So after doing the issue identification, people can put in base information about their household size, their income, citizenship status, and any special population that they might belong to. As we've done the research and worked in this space, realize that these are the main sort of gatekeeping functions for organizations. So the 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 priority, of course, as most of y'all know, is always going to be financial eligibility, with a few exceptions. But in for LSC organizations, regardless of income, a domestic violence survivor might be able to what might qualify for services. So we're able, using these special populations, to also like let people through that otherwise wouldn't ordinarily financially qualify. And that's exclusively dictated based off of your organization and what your eligibility rules are around that. So same thing with citizenship. If you can only accept citizens, but if you can accept all types, we're able to moderate which people are ultimately going to have the opportunity to apply for free legal help. And so as we move through the initial screening process, if folks are able to apply, they can go through a complete online application process. For organizations that are on Legal Server as their case management system, we can integrate directly with your case management system so that it's just like any other online intake application that you might have. It'll just go straight to pending, and you could pick it up through your normal internal intake processes. The other option is to send folks the link to the application themselves. The context of the screening tool is such that community partners might be able to help people through the initial process of doing the screening, but then ultimately pass it off to them later, or if they want to come back to that process later, not forcing people through every step if they're not ready or don't have the time to do that. So giving these sort of escape valves, but allowing people to pick back up their session, and then also selecting resources for them from our resource database within that. And so this all brings me to the Atlas administrative ecosystem. I've been talking about your organization, what your eligibility requirements are, which screening topics your organization might want to enable for people. Right now, to preface, we are still in a pilot phase with Southeast Louisiana Legal Services. That screening tool project was specific with them through a Legal Service Corporation Technology and Innovations grant that we received last year. So we're still in a pilot phase with them to just make sure that all the data transfer is working, that the kinks are worked out, that is working as people expect it to. But it's designed again in a way that everybody in our system, in our Access to Justice network, can participate in this. And so the need for an administrative ecosystem became really apparent at that point. So we are happy to say, though, that we received funding from the foundation's community partnership panels last quarter to begin phase one of this Atlas screening, referral, and intake management process. So basically what this version that's currently being built out does, it lets you manage your organization's profile on the Louisiana Legal Navigator website. So if you want to change some language, if you want to, take off, if you're change services or anything like that, your phone number changes, you move offices, any of that could be managed directly by you so that people find you. And we start creating a contributory process where everybody is in our network contributing to the upkeep and the maintenance of their own individual profiles. You can also, if you have branches to your organization, multiple offices, we know that where we want to send people differs depending on which parish they're in, or which location. So you'll also have the ability to manage your branches and the coverage area there, manage your general eligibility criteria, which include things like your percent of federal poverty, your any special populations that you want to create exceptions for, your citizenship statuses that you can take, any legal issues, the legal issues that your organization works around. All those things are granular and controllable by you, so that if people come through one of these referral processes, I forgot to even mention at this stage, if someone doesn't apply for or doesn't qualify for the legal service provider that they are the originating link came from, we'll also surface other service providers from our network that they might be able to contact instead. So let's say somebody doesn't qualify for Southeast, but they are under 400% of poverty. And so we might also send them to Free Legal Answers or to the Modest Means Directory, other types of other service providers within our network, and our service provider database, essentially. So anyway, and then you can also create and manage your own screening tools. So you'll be able to set up your new link, your intake link, and then your partnerships if you want to create like 10 partnerships with 10 different libraries and be able to track where all those things came from, and set those customizations at the partnership level. That's what you'll be able to do as soon as this phase one is complete. And again, we're in the process of building this out right now. I forgot to change the phase. This is phase two of screening and intake, but ultimately this will be an expansion of that. You'll have all the same functionalities, but for folks that are not on legal server, but that still do want to enable people to do online intake, you can have an online intake portal here where you can view people that are applying for your services based off of eligibility. And then we can also create alerts and give you the ability to download, let's say, a PDF or a PDF of that application so that you can handle it in whatever way that your internal intake systems look like. And then there's also the ability, we'll add dashboard features so that you can see your application trends and screening tool trends and things like that. We're also in the process of requesting some funding via the Access to Justice Fund administered by the LSBA's Access to Justice Committee, where we can set up a community outreach and partnership portal. So again, if you're tracking outreach efforts by a spreadsheet somewhere, giving you a way to do that, or if you're not happy with your current what is that? The case management system features for community outreach and education, or if you're just an outreach and education organization that doesn't use a case management system, being able to manage and also publish your events from this portal to the Navigator site. So reducing duplication of data entry and things like that. Track your partnerships. Importantly, the partnership component of this is also designed to feed from the same partnership basis of the screening tool. So we can have, everybody can have a clear view of all their partnerships and use them in different places where it makes sense. And then also see trends and visualizations, dashboards, do reporting and things like that. And we had previously had a meeting with the Community Outreach and Education Committee, where there was interest in the ability to share partnership information across different organizations. So just trying to create a sort of a centralized way where people can track specifically their outreach and partnerships, report on that, and then we can also coordinate and organize statewide data around the impact of these programs as well. Okay, I'm almost done, I promise you guys. The will generator is probably the last thing that's and maybe one of the most important or interesting to you all. But this is a piece of software that was developed, I guess, a year and a half ago, launched officially in February of last year, that enables people to create, that enables lawyers to automate the development of wills, powers of attorneys, as well as living wills. And so there's two ways that you can use it. The first is just if you're in a legal service organization and you do wills, you're welcome to onboard and use the software just in your regular course of your practice. But we've also set up a clinic model where organizations are using it to create these life planning events and then going out, scheduling with, a big group of folks to have and set up, coordinate volunteers to do a big legacy planning event. And so within that software, the main piece is the production of the documents. It gathers all the information and gives you the final draft for you to review with the client. And then the legacy or the life planning event creator will let set up your event for you in the system, provide you with some graphics that you can use to share with your volunteers, that gives them login instructions and some promotional materials as well. And for life planning events, clinic events specifically, it's designed so that it's only accessible by your volunteer pool on the day of the event. And then after that, it closes out. So we're able to sort of like moderate and keep this within the community here. Um, but all those volunteer lawyers can also access the software on the day of the event just from their computers, and participate in that clinic. It's also accompanied by this worksheet that I mentioned earlier, and specifically this follows the flow of the application interview itself. So as you're having a conversation with the client, all this information is being gathered in the order that it's being presented here in this worksheet. And the intent is that you might sign people up for the clinic, distribute it, or give it to them before they come to the event, so that they're prepared. And then you can have more time to talk with that client about what it is they actually, what it is they actually want. Just spend more like quality time with the clients, listening to them, versus just purely kind of gathering information, putting it into a computer, and then shoving them off to, the next step of the process to get it notarized. So we've also heard really great things about the application itself. I think there's been 20 plus clinics hosted over the last year. And the last time I looked, it was more than 1,000 documents have been created using this software. And I think it was maybe 600 or 700 individual clients that have benefited from this process. But again, all of you as legal service organizations are welcome to use this software for free. And that brings me to the last piece. How can we work together? I've talked so much. I apologize, but there's so much work that we're doing, and it's not just us. We work very heavily with a lot of folks that are already on this call. We couldn't do it without y'all, honestly. But we would be grateful and open to continuing to work with any new folks here. What we hope that you guys can help us do is spread the word about the Navigator for sure, as we continue to get more traction on that for the public, and distribute it more widely through our other types of programs. We're finding it's really worth the investment to have a single place where we're all benefiting from the resource development process that we're undergoing. So help us spread the word. Submit your events for the website. I have a link I can share after the fact. Maybe Renee, I'll share the PowerPoint with you and the link to how you can submit your event for now until we finalize the development of that community outreach portal, which would then do it automatically for you without having to duplicate data entry. I have the asterisks because also if you have a community event that you want us to participate in, let us know if the bus, is useful to you all. Please contact us and we can try and schedule Justice Bus participation and any other events that you might be having. Help contribute to content or give us ideas for content. What gaps in information do you see for the populations that you're serving? We have staff dedicated to creating content and resources, so we would love to help you out on that. And in the same vein, as subject matter experts, we're generalists over here. So as subject matter experts, if there's a topic that you really want to contribute to, please let us know. We would love to work with you. Of course, you can onboard to the will generator, help us with a kiosk installation, and getting contacts in those parishes where we're not currently at. Use the screening tool whenever we're ready to move out of the pilot phase. I'll definitely keep you all posted through the foundation. Maybe we can do a big outreach push whenever we're ready for folks to start onboarding otherwise. And then I put join access to justice committees here because, as I mentioned, we don't do this work in isolation. We invest energy heavily into participating into those committees so that we can hear what issues you guys are experiencing, what issues the populations that you serve are experiencing. So all of that information drives our strategy and how we prioritize what we do next. So I know everybody kind of hates to join a committee, but it's very effective way to sort of get your grievances out or your experiences out in a way for the entire network to benefit from that. So that's all I have. Please reach out if you have any questions. We do have a few minutes if folks want to ask anything specific, but you can always contact me by email too.